Good morning, grade 5. Um, today, I was online and I waited for you starting from 10:10, or actually before this, I started the session early, 10 minutes early. I was waiting for you, and I waited till 10:30 almost, and no one showed up. And after that, I had a power cut, so the electricity went out. So I'm not sure if any one of you tried to re-enter the session after this or not, but I waited for 20 minutes, or actually more than 20, but I'm counting starting from the start time of the session. I waited for 20 minutes and no one showed up. So I'm not sure what was your problem, but I really need you to be online on time, okay? And the same happened on Thursday. I waited for the whole time online and no one showed up. So I'm not sure what was the problem. If you face a problem logging in, just send me on a message, okay? Inform me that you're trying so we can sort things out. But if you even didn't try to join the meeting, so that's not good. Anyway, we're running out of time. What we're going to have today is what we're going to do is that we're going to finish reading the selection, and we're going to study the comprehension questions. And you're going to find the questions with answers on the study material, and you're going to find another form or another copy of it in the assignment part, where you have to answer the questions on your own. Okay, I need you to do this today. We're running out of time. We have to catch up with what we're supposed to finish before we start revising for the exam. So please just be in touch with me. If you have a problem and you cannot join the meeting, just tell me. Okay, don't just go away and tell me nothing. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. We started, give me a second. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, you're supposed to be seeing this now. We started reading the selection called, they called her Molly Pitcher. And we said Molly Pitcher was a heroine who was fighting in the Revolutionary War against the British Army, and she went to the war with her husband, um, William Hayes. As all the women of at that time, all the women used to follow their husbands, brothers, fathers, and sons to the fight. So did Molly. Okay, and we said that the role of women in those fights were to clean and cook, mend and wash clothes, and even to nurse the sick soldiers. And although these women were doing all they can do, but this wasn't enough. The army needed a lot of supplies. They were running out of everything. So it was getting cold. They didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough supplies. They didn't have enough clothes. So they really did need the supply. And after this, the supply came, and now they are ready for fight. Okay, so they started fight at the battle called Monmouth Courthouse. Okay, this fight happened in New Jersey in 1778. Um, on that day, on the day of the fight, Molly felt that this day going to be a scorcher, and as I told you, scorcher means a very hot day. And beside her main job, she was usually putting fire or putting bullets in the cannons to fire it. Okay. Beside this job, she decided that she's going to have a more important job, which is to bring water for the soldiers on that hot day. Okay, so that's why she's famous with the name Molly Pitcher, because she used to bring her pitcher filled with water. Yeah, she used to bring her pitcher filled with water to the soldiers who needed to drink on that hot day during the fight. Okay, now we're going to start reading from page 398. Still more British soldiers, under orders of Lord Cornwallis, marched toward Monmouth Courthouse. The men formed a line of scarlet like a winding river of blood. They were a magnificent and terrifying sight, but their fine uniforms weren't what they should have been wearing in the sun that blazed down on them. So, what does this part mean? That the British soldiers formed a line of scarlet like a winding river of blood. Scarlet, it means the color of red. Okay, so the uniform of the British soldiers were a scarlet coat, or sorry, it was a scarlet coat, a coat in the scarlet color, the red color. So when they stood together on one line, marching together, they seemed to be a magnificent or a magnificent river of blood because they had the color of blood where they were wearing red, the same color of blood. So when they were moving together, they seemed to be a river of blood. They were a magnificent and terrifying sight. Magnificent means great, spectacular, remember? But this uniform that they were wasn't the suitable uniform on that hot day. Let's read the second paragraph. Each man wore a tall black fur hat, a scarlet coat of thick warm wool, a wide and shining black belt that held a sharp sword, a white waistcoat, and a matching woolen pants with knee-high, tightly polished black boots. Each marched with his eyes straight ahead, a musket in his shoulder, and a knapsack full of heavy lead balls of ammunition on his back. Ammunition, it's a supply of bullets. It means a lot of bullets. So they were wearing long coat, knee high boots. They were a black fur hat. So they're wearing stuff that weren't suitable at all for the weather. It was a very hot day, and they were wearing these stuff. So this wasn't the right uniform to wear on that hot day. Okay, they moved to the stirring music of war. Drum were beating, fifes were playing, trumpets were sounding. So they marched at the sound of music that used in the battle. They are beating drums to encourage the soldiers. So they marched at the sound of the music with drums, fifes, and trumpets. Third paragraph. The soldiers started dropping as the sun rose higher. These Englishmen had never felt such heat in their home across the sea. It was almost 100 degrees in New Jersey that day. Okay, so the British soldiers weren't used to such hot weather. It was almost 100 degree Fahrenheit. Remember Fahrenheit, that American are using the Fahrenheit measure for heat, and this is almost 37 or 38 Celsius. So it's kind of hot. Yeah, imagine wearing these coats made of wool and fur at summer. So it was really hot. Okay. Men grew faint and dizzy and fell to the ground, but their companions went on marching. They never stopped or broke step. Even when one man or more collapsed, 56 British soldiers died of heat stroke that day. So 56 of British soldiers died just because of the heat. But although they were falling down, they were collapsing, they didn't stop. They kept the other or their companions, their mates, continued to march. They didn't stop for any reason. So this was terrifying. That didn't stop them. That didn't stop them though. All morning, more and more scarlet coats marching onto the field. Many American soldiers panicked at the sight of so many. General Lee couldn't maintain order. His soldier, his soldiers forgot all about fighting in the disciplined ways Parham von Stupern had taught them. Instead, they ran in terror, this way and that, hiding in ditches, up in apple trees, beneath hedges. So the American fighters or uh, the soldiers in the rebel army, in the Continental Army, when they saw so many of the British soldiers who never end, who continue marching, although they were falling down, some of them were falling down, they started to panic. They started to be afraid, okay? And they started to run everywhere, here and there. And they started to hide in ditches and on apple trees and beneath hedges. Hedges or a hedge is a bush of trees, okay? Some grass that grow near together. Okay, page 399. General Lee was sure there would be a massacre of his troops before morning turned to noon. He gave the orders to retreat. Remember, retreat, it means to leave the battle. Yeah. So he gave the order to retreat. Molly saw that some of the men, including William, her husband, disobeyed the order and kept on fighting. So some of the men didn't agree to retreat. They disobeyed the order and they kept fighting. The sun was growing hotter. As long as any member of the Continental Army needed water to drink, Molly Hayes wasn't going anywhere. So this was her job. She was just providing water for the soldiers. On one of her trips to the spring, she stumped over the body of an American soldier. She assumed he was dead until she heard him moan. The British were advancing quickly. They were approaching quickly. Guns aimed straight at their foes. Foes means enemies. So the guns of the British people were headed or aimed straight to their foes, their enemies, which are the Continental Army of the American. Molly knew she could run to safety, but the wounded man couldn't walk, let alone run. He lay directly in line of fire and would surely be killed if he stayed there. He was a good sized fellow. He wasn't small, he was a good sized fellow. But Molly wasted no time wondering how she would do what she had to do. She didn't waste time thinking. She started to act immediately. She picked the man up, slung him over her shoulder, and ran to a clump of bushes away from the gunfire. She laid him down there on the grass in the shade. She ran back toward the spring and past the cannon William was firing. Sorry. She ran back toward the spring and past the cannon William was firing just in time to see a ball from a British musket hit him. So she was running by her husband, William, who was aiming a cannon to the British soldiers. On that exact moment, she saw a bullet hitting William. He was injured. William fell to the ground. She examined her husband's wound and saw that he wouldn't die from it, but he couldn't fire his cannon. Someone had to. Molly grabbed the long ramrod, plunged it into the barrel of the cannon, and fired it off. She kept on firing. So she didn't stop. She was so brave. She decided that she's going to take over the cannon and she's going to fire it. Even she's a woman. Women at that time didn't used to do this stuff. But she decided that she's going to fire. She's not going to stop. Page 401. A ball fired low from a British musket came whizzing straight toward Molly. Whizzing means to move quickly. Okay? So a ball fired from the British musket came whizzing straight toward Molly. She quickly spread her legs wide. The musket ball passed between them. It never touched her, but her skirt and the petticoat were ripped and became a good deal shorter than they had been. She muttered that it could have been worse and went back to work firing the cannon. Okay, so a pole fired or a bullet was very near to her. It even ripped her dress. But she didn't panic. She just said, okay, it could have been worse, and she started fighting again. She was so brave. Soon, General Washington galloped onto the field riding Nelson. Okay, galloped means, can you see this word? Galloped. Gallop means to ride a horse quickly. So soon, General Washington galloped onto the field riding Nelson. So, can you guess who is Nelson? Nelson, okay, he's riding Nelson. So, maybe Nelson is, no, of course, it's not one of the soldiers, right? It is his horse. Yeah, his horse was named Nelson. His fine horse who never shied at the noise of guns or cannons. So yes, Nelson was his horse. No matter how close they were, Washington carried the flag of Commander in Chief, 13 stars in a circle on a field of blue silk. The flag fluttered and flew above the smoke of battle. It wasn't as bright as the scarlet coats of the British soldiers were, but to everyone who had stayed on to fight, it was a cheering and glorious sight. For the rest of that hot and steamy day, the Continental Army fought the way Baron von Steuben had taught it to. George Washington saw to that. As he galloped over the battlefield, shouting orders and spurring his men on, spurring means encouraging, he was amazed to catch a glimpse of a woman. She was blurred by the smoke that surrounded her. Her face was smudged with gunpowder and sweat. But George Washington saw her take a deep breath, then run and shove the long ramrod into the big gun with her face was smudged with gunpowder and sweat. George Washington saw her take a deep breath, then run and shove the long ramrod into the big gun with as much force as possible. The cannon boomed. The explosion shocked the ground, but the woman paid no attention. She just got ready to fire the cannon again. When the sun gets, the fighting stopped. Neither side could go on in darkness. Exhausted British and American soldiers put down their guns and tended to their dead and wounded. Late that night, they sat down to eat and rest, to prepare themselves for another day of fighting. That same night, General Washington asked some of his officers about the woman he asked his officers about the woman he had seen firing a cannon. He listened to what they said about how she had carried water through the gunfire to the soldiers all that morning. Page 402. Okay, page 402. Washington ordered that woman be brought before him. He told her, be brought before him means to be brought in front of him. He told her she had been as brave in battle as any man he had ever seen. Sorry, he had ever heard of. He decided she had earned the rank of sergeant in the Continental Army. So now he gave her the rank of a sergeant. It's military rank, okay? And at that time, that wasn't usual at all for a woman to be ranked or to have a rank in the army. So as she listened to what that tall, strong general said, Molly Hayes had never felt so proud in her life. No man who heard General Washington speak to her that night doubted that Molly had earned her rank. They didn't doubt this. They were sure that if he decided so they are sure that yes, she earned that rank. She worked hard. She was so brave. As the news spread through the troops, no soldier sneered at the thought of a woman being a sergeant in his army. Sneered means to smile in a mocking way, like smiling, not liking this. Okay, No one did so, even though no one present had ever heard of such a thing. No one heard of a woman having the rank of a sergeant, but no one doubted, no one refused. That night, Sergeant Molly Hayes lay down on the grass at the edge of the field beside William, her husband, and the rest of soldiers of the Continental Army. Long after the stars filled the sky, General George Washington spread his cape over the grass, tied Nelson, the horse, to a tree, and lay down with his weary soldiers. Weary means tired. He lay down with the tired soldiers. As he lay gazing up the stars, planning his strategy for the next day's battle, fires danced on the hill across the field where the British were camped. The voices of the voices of many men carried thought. Yeah, the voices of men carried through the night. Sentries marched back and forth, keeping their endless watch. It was very late before everything was quiet except for the chorus of frogs in the nearby swamp. Molly and the other American soldiers rose before the sun. They had had some sleep and were ready to fight again. Many believed they could win, but they didn't fight the British that day. No scarlet coated soldiers marched onto the field. They had gone away, so they didn't have a fight the next day. The British soldiers had gone. They left. Sir Henry Clinton and Lord Cornwallis had ordered a retreat, so they ordered the British army to retreat. They didn't want their men to fight that wily old fox again this morning. They were afraid they'd lose. Washington's Continental Army didn't fight like farmers as the British leaders had been sure they would. They fought like soldiers, and one of those soldiers was a woman. Okay, so they didn't have a fight next day. No, the British army were afraid if they fought, they would lose. Although they thought these these people or these fighters in the army would just fight like farmers. They didn't have the enough knowledge to be soldiers in the army and know the tactics and strategies to fight, but they were shocked that yes, they could fight. And one of these soldiers was a very brave and patriot woman, Molly Pitcher. Okay, that's great. Now let's start having the comprehension questions. Okay, so number one, based on selection, what was the role of women who followed soldiers in Valley Forge? If you remember, those women cooked and cleaned, washed and mended clothes, and nursed the sick. Okay, next question. Who was the main character of the story? You're sure it's the main character is Mary Hayes, known as Molly Pitcher. Mary Hayes, the wife of William Hayes, and she was known or nicknamed as Molly Pitcher. Okay. What can you conclude about Molly's character after she followed her husband into the battle? What can you think of Molly when she followed her husband to the battle? She was a brave woman, right? Sure, she didn't afraid to go to fight. Of course, she knew that she could have been killed, but she wasn't afraid. She was a brave woman. Number four, why was she called Molly Pitcher? Why was she called Molly Pitcher? If you remember, we said that she was called Molly Pitcher because she was carrying her pitcher, bringing water to soldiers during the fight. She was carrying her pitcher, bringing water to soldiers during the fight. Okay, number five. What did Molly do when her husband was injured? Did she start to cry? Did she panic? No. She picked up his rammer and reloaded and fired the cannon through the battle. She picked up his rammer and reloaded the fight cannon. Sorry, the fight. She sorry. Hold with me for a second. I'm going to stop, or I'm going to pause the video for 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So we were asking, what did Molly do when her husband was injured? She didn't panic. She picked up his rammer and reloaded and fired the cannon through the battle, right? She took over the cannon that he used to fight. She knew that someone had to use this cannon, someone had to fire that cannon, and she stepped in. She decided that she's the one who's going to do so. Okay, next question number 6. Why might the author describe the sight of large group of British soldiers moving together as magnificent? Why did the author describe the sight of the large group of British soldiers moving together as magnificent? Because they were so organized and they didn't stop for any reason. Even though that some of them were falling down and collapsing, they didn't stop. They kept on moving and they had a large number of soldiers. They were such a large number of soldiers. They never ended. So they were so organized. They marched together to the sound of music and they wore the same uniform. So they formed, they were like a river of blood. Remember? So because they were so organized and they didn't stop for any reason. Okay, question 7. Why did General George Washington wanted to see Molly later after the fight? Why did General George Washington wanted to see Molly later after the fight? When he saw how brave she was, he wanted to honor her. Yeah, because he wanted to honor her for her bravery and he gave her the rank of a sergeant in the Continental Army. So he wanted to honor her for her bravery and he honored her with the rank, or he gave her the rank of a sergeant in the army. Okay, question 8. Why didn't the battle continue the next day? Why there wasn't a fight the next day? Because the British army had retreated away and they were afraid they would lose if they fought the Americans. Okay, now let's ask the question, what is the genre of the story? It's a narrative nonfiction. Okay, nonfiction because the events are real, and it's a narrative because it's like a story. He's telling the real events that happened as a story. So it's a narrative nonfiction. The last question, what is the setting of the story? When did the story and where did it happen? It happened in It happened in the Battle of Monmouth, New Jersey in 1778. Remember, in the summer of 1778. Okay, so this these are the comprehension questions. I would like you to study them. If you have any question related to them, please ask me. And that's it for today. That's it for today. I'm going to see you tomorrow, inshallah. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate. Do not forget to do the assignment part. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye bye.